Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer, and I am with CUGC HQ. And I'm happy to welcome you to today's Connect webinar with Goliath Technologies. I'm going to be talking about automated intelligence to help augment your Citrix expertise. And I know a lot of you are super busy right now with everything that's going on, so I'm just very happy to have you join us today. Really quickly, before we get into it, just a couple of housekeeping details. Today's presentation is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording tomorrow. That is going to come in an email from GoToWebinar, so be on the lookout for that. Also, just a reminder that you can submit your questions in the chat box anytime. We'll take them, some of them throughout the presentation and some of them after the presentation. It just kind of depends on how things flow and what your questions are. But definitely go ahead and type those in as you have them so that you don't forget them. And finally, at the end of the presentation, I will throw a link in the chat for you to a short survey. It's anonymous, it's for CUGC use only, and we just like to get your feedback. One quick word, I know that with everything that's going on, we haven't been able to have our CUGC live events, but I do want you to know that CUGC is still working. A lot of our local events have been turned into virtual meetings, so the best thing to do is check out our events calendar at mycugc.org. Our next XL event, which was supposed to be an in-person event in the UK, is now a virtual event, and anyone can register for that event. You don't have to be in the UK, you don't have to be a member of the UK local group. If you're interested in the content and the presenters that are going to be presenting that day, please feel free to go ahead and register. And that goes for a lot of our other local meetings. It's interesting to check out what some of the other groups are doing. So just because we can't meet in person, we can still meet online. All right, so with us today, we have Richard Faulkner. He is a CTP, and he's going to keep an eye on all of those questions that you put in the chat box, and he will be monitoring those and ask them when appropriate. Richard, would you like to say hello?
Hey everybody, and thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And with Goliath today, we have Yemi Lediju. He is a senior technical consultant, and we also have Stacy Leidwinger. She is the CMO from Goliath. Both of them are going to be working on this presentation today. So I'm going to turn things right on over to Yemi to get us started. Yemi, let me send you the screen right now.
And if you technically turn it over to Yemi, Stephanie, I'll go ahead and get started. So thank you, Stephanie and Richard, for having us today. I also wanted to just extend my warmest gratitude to everyone that is joining. I hope this is taking a few minutes out of what is probably an extremely busy time for you as all of your employees move to remote working. So our goal is to really quickly demonstrate to you that there are tools out there that can help you through a lot of these challenges that have just landed on your plate. So let's kick off, Yemi, if you want to go to the next slide. So even before this surge of remote workers, many of you out there probably felt under-resourced and ill-equipped to support the demands of your Citrix community within your organization. And have you ever sat back and wondered, why is that? Well, the answer is there's simply not enough resources to keep up with the demand for Citrix experts. So I did a little bit of math this afternoon. If you take that there's 400,000 roughly Citrix customers, and for most organizations of average size, you ideally want 2 to 3 experts to manage that environment. So the global demand is approximately 1.2 million experts. Well, the good news for all of you out there in some way is that the supply is much, much lower. You know, there's 62 Citrix technical professional CTPs like Richard out there. There's roughly another 50 to 150 CTAs. And then maybe at best, there's another 50,000 experts that have taken some level of training and have gotten some level of certification. So even on a good day, the supply is roughly 60,000 or less. So you can see the difference that is out there. Now, the other piece of this, Yemi, if you go to the next slide, is I'm sure many of you feel this. Not only are you under-resourced and ill-equipped, but you also probably spend more than 25% of your day just troubleshooting basic end user tickets. These are tickets that probably could or should be handled by the help desk. These are things of careless user error, maybe aren't errors at all, but take away from those strategic projects that you're trying to put in place. And then on top of that, Yemi, next slide, that you now are facing this unprecedented surge of remote workers. So I'm sure over the last days, the amount of end user tickets you're getting has been on the rise. You have a number of employees that have never worked remote, trying to work remote for the first time, scrambling to make sure that you have enough licenses to meet everyone's needs, struggling to ensure that your employees have the right bandwidth and Wi-Fi allocation and setup that they can be successful on their job. They're trying to compete with bandwidth when it comes to kids at home doing online schooling, perhaps their spouse or partner that's also trying to work online. In addition to just keeping up with this demand, I'm also suspecting, like many of our customers, you're seeing an increased request for the amount of documentation needed. Management wants to know how's performance, what is the actual end user experience for our remote workers. Business line managers are asking you for activity reports. They want to know, are employees working or not? And there you are diligently trying to react to all these needs, but also sitting back going, how do you get ahead of this? Because it's not going to change anytime soon. And so again, what we're here really with Goliath is to talk about how we can help you with some of these challenges. Next slide. So we at Goliath have helped organizations for years now of all sizes and industries measure, troubleshoot, and monitor the end user experience for highly distributed and remote workers. We're able to scale both technically and economically to meet the needs of smaller businesses as well as global Fortune 100 organizations. We also have a stronghold on healthcare. We have purpose-built modules for all major EHR systems, Cerner, Epic, Allscripts, Meditech, that can allow you to monitor and measure and troubleshoot the performance not only across the Citrix environment, but how it's interacting with those EHR platforms. So anyone in healthcare where you're seeing an increase in remote workers with your back office staff or increased demand because physicians and clinicians need to see more patients and technology cannot be an impediment to them right now, we have solutions that can help. We also recognize right now this is an unbudgeted need. So we have some very specific and flexible subscription options to get you through this need that you can have immediate impact. I'm going to talk a little bit about one company on here, Penn National, because actually last year they came to us and said, we're instituting a new virtual workspace initiative project because of an increase in remote workers. They needed a way to monitor performance so they could get ahead of end user issues. They needed to quickly troubleshoot issues as they came in, identifying if it was a bottleneck within the Citrix infrastructure or surrounding infrastructure, or was it an issue with end user behavior? Maybe they had a large audio file running in the background. They also needed to document to management that as performance issues came up, they were quickly addressed. They also needed that documented evidence so they could have better collaborative conversations with other vendors, whether it be Citrix or they happen to be using iGel, Cisco Softphones, and a whole other slew of technologies that often were causing performance issues and needed to determine, is the issue Citrix or is it with something within that other delivery layer? And this is where Goliath came in to help them. Next slide, Yemi. So what Goliath offers is really specific elements. We're going to show this in just one more minute around how we can help you and your colleagues really troubleshoot issues as they come up quickly. We offer deep and broad metrics from that end-to-end IT delivery infrastructure. We go beyond just Citrix, looking at the hypervisor host layer, back-end systems like licensing server, SQL Server, Active Directory. We look at environmental factors such as network bandwidth allocation. We also have this embedded intelligence and automation. That's really what we're going to be highlighting today and why we can often serve, as our customers say, as a full-time troubleshooting expert out of the box. We started off by understanding these issues and we built this intelligence and automation into our product. And we can actively alert in over 250 IT conditions, failure points, or events to let you know that there's a bottleneck in performance before your end users are ever impacted. We then offer historical reports and analytics measuring the actual end user experience. So not only can we prove that performance has improved when you do put permanent fixes in place, but we can look over time historically. So we could look at, on the rise of remote working, what is performance? As you made adjustments, as you made improvements, did that truly impact performance? And we keep this data 30, 60, 90, 120 days. It's really up to you so that you can monitor those trends. And you can look across user groups. You could look across different systems. A lot of our reports and data can be sliced to meet your business needs. And finally, we do have login tracking of actual end user activity. And Yemi's going to show this in his demonstration. So we know not only when users log in, but are they actually active during their session? Are they truly working? So with that, I'm going to jump in and just give a little bit of a preview before Yemi gets into the demo and talk a little bit about the day in the life of a Citrix administrator. Quite frankly, this might have been my most challenging task because I don't think there's a typical day sitting in front of any one of you right now. But we talked with Richard, we talked with some of our customers, and this is what we put together. Next slide. I'm sure many of you are, first waking up to urgent tickets that have come across your plate. But as you address those, you probably then have your mental checklist. What can you do to make sure performance is where it should be? You have a couple places that you look to confirm things are working as is. You probably have a set of scripts that you manually or maybe automatically are even kicking off. Doing your best to try and anticipate issues as best you can. It's probably imperfect. You're also working through some strategic projects. Maybe you're adding more CPU usage so that you can have better performance. But I'm sure before you can get too far in your day, things like this happen. You get an urgent ticket. The VP of sales was trying to use his voice over IP phone and the call would not start. And so he frantically puts in an urgent ticket. He can't work today. He needs you to look at this. But of course, he can't get on the phone with you because in the next 3 hours, he has phone calls back to back. So here you are trying remotely to troubleshoot. Is it something in the infrastructure? Is it a problem with the phone? Did he do something that could have caused the issue? You're talking to the network team. So you're feverishly trying to look into this. And as you do that, just more and more tickets are coming in. You're starting to see a pattern. So since you can't get a hold of them, you put that ticket on hold. You've scheduled to talk to them at 2 o'clock today. The next thing you start doing is looking at these tickets that have come in. It seems like there's issues with the West Coast team. They're hitting some kind of roadblocks and they're having poor session performance. So you're going ahead, you're asking the network team, are they seeing anything? The server team. In the heart of hearts, your gut instinct is it's an old Zen server. You've been telling your manager that you needed that Zen server replaced, but procurement keeps saying that they're still 2 years good on it. So there's no way for you to prove that that's really the issue, but now you're trying to come up with other potential fixes. At some point, you get back to your strategic project of adding CPU usage. You're on and off the phone calls and emails with users, trying to really diagnose and help troubleshoot many of their issues. You're talking to the help desk, trying to help them take some of these frontline calls. You feel relieved when the VP of sales calls you or emails and cancels the call and says he doesn't know, he rebooted, everything's working fine. So at some point you reach stability. You're testing your CPU usage, trying to confirm that performance has improved. You walk away for dinner and you are get ready to kind of start the day over again the next morning. But before you head off to bed, you see an urgent email comes and your boss wants documentation that you improved the VP's connection because now there's an urgent escalation that everyone thinks the voice over IP phones are not working. So this may not be exact of your day, but I'm sure many of these interruptions, many of these challenges are things that are facing you in and out, whether it's today in this new remote working environment, or if it was even prior to the urgency that we're seeing. Richard, would you say this sounds like the day in the life for many that you're talking and interacting and yourself?
Yeah, I would say that many of my customers have faced similar issues like that.
So great. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Yemi, right? And he's going to show to all of you there is a better way. And as I said, this better way can truly leverage a lot of the automation and intelligence to take the pressures off of you, allow you to support these new challenges, especially around some of the documentation needs. Yemi, go ahead.
Thanks, Stacy. And I think when we take a look at that list, and I think Stacy you did a really good job of sort of setting the precedent or setting the stage for what it looks like for an IT professional supporting users connecting into resources from all over the world. The first thing that typically is on their plate when they come in is they need to understand what failures or what issues have taken place. And how Goliath particularly comes into play is the technology is built with embedded intelligence and automation, and it's going to be looking for specific issues, whether it's conditions, failure points, thresholds, events that if not taken care of can actually cause end user experience issues. So instead of an IT professional walking in and starting their workday looking for or starting different scripts, they can now get alerts, particularly pointing them to issues that have taken place, whether it's over the night before or issues that are gradually going to present to end users, so that at any point in time, they have the ability to understand exactly some of these issues and get started on fixing them preemptively before they start to impact the end users. So that's the one point of view, right? Getting a sort of 50,000 foot or architect's overview of the environment because of the embedded intelligence and automation. However, you still need to be able to anticipate issues that are impacting users that are currently in the environment. When we take, and I know Stacy brought up Penn National, when you take, for instance, how they use the technology, they always have this screen up, which is the Citrix virtual apps and desktop session display. They have a mobile workspace environment where all of their users have the ability to work from home at any point in time. What they told us was that they had this screen up on their big screen or knock view, and they were sort of just always taking a look at some of the sessions that are taking place. Keep in mind that within the Goliath administrative tool, you have the ability to set threshold-based alerts based on any user experiencing any sort of issue within their session. So whether that is sustained latency inside of their session, or long logon time, or application crashes, or something like that. So you can get real-time alerts to those sort of things. But in Penn National's case, they decided to just have this on the screen, and you can see that they filtered based on ICA latency. And whenever users started to get sort of higher ICA latencies, they were starting to spike, they now had the ability to reach out to them preemptively and say, hey, you're having a bad session. We've already seen this, and then take them through the process of actually trying to support them, whether it's taking a look at their connection speed or taking a look at their at the different metrics that we collect that we'll jump into in the troubleshooting section. But this now gives them the ability to get ahead of these issues before they start getting an influx, or before users start complaining, and then having a bad sort of bad opinion on the Citrix or VMware Horizon environment. So before we jump into troubleshooting and how our customers leverage the technology to do so, I wanted to pause and see if there are any questions. Richard.
Yes, we do actually have a question from John Billings, has asked, what is the integration with Splunk like?
That's a good question. So a lot of our customers leverage the technology to integrate with different tools like Splunk or ServiceNow and SCOM and things like that. So for the most part, most of our customers leverage SMTP. But we have done some sort of custom integrations with other tools out there. So whether it's with API integration, a lot of our customers leverage Syslog and SNMP traps as well. But yeah, we have sort of standard integration with SMTP, but we can definitely talk about some further customized integrations as well.
That's all we had so far.
Sounds good. So that's sort of taking care of the anticipating aspect of things, right? Being able to get ahead of issues impacting users or users' ability to not only access their resources, but to have good sessions within their resources. But then obviously in that same scenario, when we're talking about a day in the life of an IT professional, there's the ability to troubleshoot issues as they come up. Take, for instance, the example of the VP of sales calling in, complaining that there's issues within his VDI session, specifically when it comes to leveraging his IP soft phone inside of his session. You want to be able to understand exactly what's impacting that session or what's causing that issue to take place. And that's where customers leverage this portion of the technology, which is within the session display. When you click on an individual user session, the technology aligns all of the components that actually contributed to the session, and it aligns it for the time frame of the user session, taking into consideration their connection, taking into consideration the VM, the hypervisor host, the delivery controller, and all of those components that actually help deliver that session. So now IT can have in a single view some deep metrics on how to troubleshoot or how to find out exactly what's impacting the session. We have a screenshot here, but I'll jump into the technology after sort of walking through this example. But here, what we're looking at is the summary screen, the session summary screen. When you click on a user, you now get a pop-up showing you this page that really breaks down the key performance metrics highlighted in green as to what's actually causing in-session performance issues. Here we can see round trip times, and I'm sure I don't have to explain what round trip time is to most of us here. Sort of just an accurate depiction of whether or not this user is having a problem or not inside of their session. So if you look at this particular user session and see, well, it looks like his round trip times were high or started to be high at this point in a time, then the next step is to try and figure out why that was actually the case. Well, then you can take a look at network latency. This is really breaking out the network portion of that round trip time. And then you can see if, well, it looks like network latency is actually the driving factor for that poor round trip time. But that gets us close enough, but it doesn't really help us in most scenarios, because obviously when we're talking about users connecting in from a bunch of different areas, you do assume that network latency is actually going to be a root cause. But what's actually driving that high network latency? Then we can look here at connection speed. This is the amount of bandwidth available for Citrix receiver at the user's endpoint. So in the case of Penn National Insurance, where they're able to identify some sort of satellite users leveraging the VDI sessions, and being able to point to poor connection speed at their endpoints as being the root cause of the slowness and not something else, that was something that really saved their virtual workspace initiative. And in this particular case, with this VP of sales connecting in, it was very interesting, and I think we can take it in further in this slide, where they were able to see a spike in network latency round trip time, and ICA latency, and that correlated specifically to a drop in connection speed at that user's location. So in that case, a conversation with the VP of sales would then be, hey, it looks like you were having a good session up until this point. What happened at 3 p.m. or something like that in your household? Then the doctor would say, oh, well, it looks like my kids got on the Xbox at that particular time. And that actually was the root cause, because everyone's on the Wi-Fi, and then the connection speed went down. And you can see, I told them to get off the Xbox and go do something outside or go play or something like that, and you can see the connection speed start to rise up. This sort of information has typically been a blind spot, especially when we're talking about documenting information and making sure that you're having these productive conversations, whether it's with the end users, whether it's with the network team at a particular location. This sort of allows you to point to exactly what's the root cause of the issue and how it's impacting an individual within their own session. And that's sort of what is really needed for that quick troubleshooting, and that's how it's and that's something that's provided with Goliath, because this is all aligned to a user and all aligned to that user session. So with that, I'm going to jump right into the technology, because Obviously, screenshots are great, but I wanted to sort of point out what this looks like within a technology. So here's that session display. I've isolated an individual user session. And again, once you click on a session, you get a pop-up of about 7 or 8 tabs, depending on what's actually configured, showing all of the information that's actually pertinent to this user session. So the summary tab, as you can see the round trip time, you can expand that, zoom in and out if you need to. And here in the ICHDX channel tab, this is where you're able to come up with those answers as to what's causing or what's impacting that user session, whether it's from a ICA latency perspective, a connection speed perspective. It really gives you that final ability to come up with those answers. Now, keep in mind that some of these metrics are very new. Some of these metrics aren't available in other tools. So from any one of these tabs within the technology, you have the ability here to click on this question mark icon, and it takes you directly to our knowledge base that points out each one of these metrics. It defines the metrics, as well as gives you details as to how to use them to troubleshoot in any scenario. So for instance, if you were trying to troubleshoot issues with logon times, as you click on the logon tab, you can see sort of the details here, what's going on during the brokering stages of the process, what's going on during authentication, what's going on from a group policy perspective, where you can see all of the group policies down to the policy names and things like that. If any one of these metrics or any one of these sections are sort of new to you, you can click here on this magnifying or on this question mark icon, takes you to the Logon Duration tab, so you can sort of further troubleshoot. Some of the other metrics or tabs here, really quickly, we talked about the ICHDX channel tab, where you can not only troubleshoot the connection, but you can actually troubleshoot user behavior, which is something that's also a blind spot, being able to see things like the types of bandwidth based on the different channels that are being used in the session. Stacy gave an example of someone doing something or having an audio file running in their session. This will give you the ability to see, okay, it looks like they were streaming audio inside of their session, and that actually correlated with a spike in latency, and that actually impacted the session negatively, or maybe watching a movie or watching a video inside of their session. So those sort of things that are typically blind spots, you're able to see here within the technology. Another tab that we can look at here, if it's not a user behavior, here you can look at the app server tab. Take a look at the server itself for the time frame of the session, or the hypervisor host for the time frame of the session as well, where you can see what data stores are attached, what other VMs are being supported by that host, so on and so forth. You can see the processes that are running. Even in the event log section, the alerts and event log section, you'll be able to see any out-of-the-box alerts that have triggered on this machine. Again, leveraging that embedded intelligence and automation of the technology, as well as any application or system error or warning events that take place during the time frame of this user session as well. So, and typically when we're talking about non-persistent machines, this comes in very handy. So effectively what you have as an IT professional is the ability to troubleshoot everything from the connection of the user to the resources supporting the user, to the user's behavior, down to the Windows and event log level. So again, if any issue comes up, you have objective evidence to be able to either escalate to the proper teams to solve these issues, or to have those collaborative conversations with the end users. So with that, we're going to jump over to the final section, which is sort of preventing issues from happening in the future. And how we like to describe sort of preventing issues is leveraging historical reports and analytics to be able to justify any fix actions moving forward. And how we do that is our technology comes with a number of, I think it's over 65 reports. And particularly these reports give you insight not only into performance, but especially with the climate that we're in right now, giving you insight into the activity and usage of the virtualization environment, so that you could then, number one, justify maybe removing hosts from rotation, or justify any changes that have taken place in the environment, whether it's from new technologies that are implemented or so on and so forth, but also to show managers and show user activity during sort of times like these where we have a lot of users working from home and so on and so forth. So here you can see sort of the performance reports that we have and user experience, so giving you the latencies, connection speeds, those sort of metrics that really drive the in-session performance. Logon duration, where we detail each stage of the process per user, per delivery group if needed. ICA latency, so on and so forth, as well as some of the back-end systems performance and time. And then we have the end user activity or the activity reports where you can see the usage. The end user activity report is something that I know Stacy can speak to. It's been heavily requested by a lot of our users or a lot of our customers, particularly in this climate, because it breaks open the different, not only how often a user accesses the environment, but it also breaks open the active hours that the user has in the environment. So how long are they actually spending within their session creating ICA traffic, which is really, really important, because a lot of times, especially when you're talking about contractors, people just open up their VDI session and go for a walk or go do something else. And this really breaks down the time that they're actually working within their session. And then there's peak usage report as well. So on the next slide, I just have open some of the most popular reports that I just mentioned. So the first one here, it is the end user activity report. Again, you can see for an individual user, you can see the number of sessions, the active hours within their sessions. So this typically, you know, when a customer, when a manager asks, okay, has this person been working, or have these people been working? This report's typically sent out to answer those questions objectively. The next one here is the license usage report. As you know, this was something that's been heavily requested from us as well because of the whole climate, I guess. You have, you know, users, you have companies where, let's say 40% of the users work remotely leveraging the tools. And then it's just over a week, there's a spike to 100% of the users, right? So being able to understand what the license usage is with peak hours and things like that, so that you can support these users, is something that has been heavily requested. And then you have the logon duration reports breaking out each stage of the process for different delivery groups or users, as well as here, this is one that's more sort of graphically pleasing. I know this one is used particularly just to show management, that either something that has been input or been placed into the environment is either negatively or positively impacting the environment. So to go back to Stacy's analogy, where there was a Zen server host that needed to be removed from the rotation, this sort of report really breaks open. It gives you the ability to show management, hey, looks like all of the users that were on the Zen server host, you can see there's an increase in logon times compared to the other users that weren't on those hosts. And this really sort of justifies the need to either procure a new hardware or remove that from a rotation. So before I pass it back to Stacy, I wanted to stop to see if there are any questions that came up.
Okay, we do have a couple questions. The first one was from Jamie. They asked, do you have integrations with ServiceNow or a RESTful API? Yes, that's something that, you know, yeah, we have done that in the past. You know, for the most part, most of our customers leverage the SMTP functionality with ServiceNow, but we do have customers where we've created sort of custom integrations into ServiceNow and other tools as well. And then Kurt asks, what separates Goliath from your competitors, like ControlUp or EG? You know, that's a good point. I think all of those tools and all of those products are very good. You know, it really does depend on, you know, the things that are important to you as an end user.
But what our customers typically tell us is that when it comes to troubleshooting issues, they find that our tool is a little bit, gives them a lot more information and a lot more ability to do so. Having a single pane of glass view that takes into consideration all of those key metrics that allow you to come up with answers quickly, I think customers really like. And some of the details that we collect when it comes to troubleshooting. So not only are we breaking open the logon duration for each one of those user sessions, where in explicit detail, where some of those other tools might get 4 or maybe 8 stages, we get over 33 stages of the logon process. And also with key performance metrics as well. So metrics like connection speed, user connection speed, that gives you the exact bandwidth available at an end user's location. Breaking open the network latency and breaking open the different channels within the ICA protocol to give you insight into user behavior, which again, all of those metrics typically would be a blind spot without sort of a tool like that. So it really just comes down to troubleshooting. If you ask me sort of to point out one thing, comes down to troubleshooting and the ability to get to that information quickly and easily.
Maybe to jump in too there, Yemi, I think real quick, the other thing which is important on this documentation, and sorry, I was just doing a user story on this, is it is our historical report. So one of the things that does set apart is that we are collecting data, we're not aggregating it. So you can actually go in and see user X, what was their performance 30 days ago compared to now. So if they are complaining that performance has been getting poorer over the last 30 days, you have proof around that. Or if you put a fix in place, we can show you what that looked like. So if you upgrade your Zen server, we can show you a snapshot before it was upgraded and then show you a snapshot 30, 60, 90 days after the upgrade has happened. So on top of that troubleshooting use case, it's also that historical view of documentation that I think is another area that we've really focused to differentiate our solution.
Okay, that was all the questions. I do want to make sure everybody understands that to ask a question, you can open the controls, and then there's a question section that will allow you to type in a question so that I can then pass it on to the presenters.
All right, Yemi, if you want to go to the next slide.
Hang on, sorry, I did get. Oh. I got one more.
Oh, great, we love questions.
That how far back does the historical reporting go? I think is what they're asking.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Stacey.
Oh, I was just going to say, since I brought it up, it's really up to you. So we don't put a cap on it. Many of our customers keep it 90, maybe 120 days. It's really about how much information you want to store. Any other questions? All right.
That's all we have.
Perfect. So as others start thinking, bring them in here as we wrap up. So what you just saw from Yemi, right, is where when you're leveraging the embedded intelligence and automation that is proactively looking for issues, that is giving you those deep and broad metrics to isolate root cause quickly, that's giving you the documentation you need to collaborate with not only management and users, but other vendors, even other IT teams. In this time of challenging times that we're in right now, we've had many of our customers say, thank you for this information, because I was able to quickly get on the phone call with our network team and I really talk through a bandwidth issue, because up until that point, everything looked fine, or our server team or our app team. So you saw the ability to really prevent issues, isolate that root cause, give the documentation, and ultimately this frees your time up for those strategic projects. Next slide. And this is why at the end of the day, a lot of our customers tell us when they use Goliath, it's almost as if they've hired a full-time troubleshooting expert that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that doesn't need any training, that requires no documentation and going back and forth. And so this is an opportunity to really have a partner by your side so you can do the things that you want to do and provide extreme value, looking at performance enhancements, always being on the latest and greatest technology. And again, we do that through our embedded intelligence, broad and deep metrics, and that historical report. And one last I brought this up earlier, we didn't show today, but we have that ability to also do this across EHR systems if you are in healthcare. So we can actually determine if, let's say, Epic is running slow, or you have high exception rates in Epic, which may be impacting an honor roll report. We can let you know, is that performance bottleneck within your underlying Citrix infrastructure? Is it an element outside? Is it the EHR system? I mean, oftentimes that is one of the biggest challenges in healthcare, is really isolating the root cause between the EHR app, clinician behavior, and the underlying infrastructure, and we can help you do that. So if, we'll open this up for questions in a minute, but if you would like to look at a free trial, or if you would like to talk to us about some of the special subscription pricing that we're offering right now during this surge of remote workers, please go ahead and contact us at techinfo@goliathtechnologies.com, and we'd be happy to talk through how we could get something up and running in your environment very quickly to start having an impact. So I want to thank everyone, and then Richard, turn it over to you for the rest of the questions.
Okay, so we have some more questions coming in. Anton has asked, do you collect or analyze ICA and HTTPS metrics from the ADC, for example, via Appflow or Syslog?
That is a good question. We get all of the information that we showed today on the demonstration without any integration or reliance on NetScaler or ADM or any other sort of Citrix tools like that. This is all from our sort of proprietary integration within the ICA protocol, meaning that you don't have to have NetScaler or ADM inside of the environment to get this information, whether that's internal or external connections.
Okay. And then Kurt had a couple questions. The first was, are there any action script features that they can run to remediate a session?
Absolutely. So our technology, first of all, it has some, embedded intelligence and sets up for alerts. And any one of these alerts can actually, depending on what the alert is, you could sort of kill a process or restart a service. You can even trigger some sort of complex remediation actions, like, let's say, for instance, in the case of, let's say, a printer spooler or service error, it could, a PowerShell script or batch file could kill the service, restart, kill the service, clear the printer cache, email users that had jobs to resend those jobs and then restart the service. So you can really do some more complex remediation actions with the technology as well.
Okay, so I kind of covered the second question about whether it was conditional and automatic on the scripting and so forth. And then the last question he had was, how do you price the software?
So as far as pricing, we typically go by element monitored. That's how it's licensed. But we tend to be very flexible, especially within this climate where there's a surge of remote users accessing the environment. We have some different programs that we're running sort of in a subscription manner to help help troubleshoot issues in the environment.
Okay, and finally, Stephen asks, are there any specific metrics for monitoring options for GPUs?
That is a good question. So we actually do have specific Zen server integration with vGPUs, so we can sort of give you additional insight into memory and vGPU performance and align it to the session. So we do have some ability to do that right now for Zen server.
And I'm going to ask a couple others. How long does it take to implement the application?
Yeah, when we talk about implementation, it typically is it's about a 90-minute to 2-hour call where we install the technology and then configure the environment, configure some email alerts and reports and things like that. So we typically would set a 2-hour call. 90 minutes of that would be configuration, and then we'll spend the next 30 minutes or so then sort of walking through the technology and things like that. And then over the next week or so, we do personalized trainings where we sort of go through the technology with the team, align you, and sort of make sure that you understand some of the metrics that we collect within the technology and how to use them to troubleshoot.
Okay, and what if the customers are using a hosted application like Cerner? Do you guys can you monitor any of their hosted environments?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And Cerner, we actually have a partnership with Cerner where Cerner actually resells our product. So yes, if you have Cerner remote hosted option, RHO, our technology is actually the only performance monitoring technology that can be deployed into the Cerner RHO environment. So you can get end-to-end visibility from that Cerner RHO session all the way up into whether it's the on-premises VDI where you have a double hop, or to the end user itself. So you really have the ability to get any of the information we covered today, even in a hosted environment like Cerner.
That sounds pretty good. We do have another. Hang on a second. Do you have a designated staff to handle onboarding, or if you have issues, you need to just call in the general support number?
So we do have 24/7 support. So if there are any questions, if you need any training or something like that, 24/7 support is available. And we also have our sort of engineering and implementation team that goes on with the onboarding as well. So we have certifications free of charge for as many users as possible. So as many people that you would like to train on the technology, that's all available. And then we have sort of those knowledge-based articles that I went over in the demonstration on that gives you specific examples of how to use the technology, specific examples of what issues you can actually solve with the technology as well. So we do have a lot of processes in place to help not only with support but also with onboarding and training.
Okay, and then it looks like Kurt sent an email to the trial and got a message back that says, your message to Michael Clark at Goliath Technologies could not be delivered. The group Michael Clark only accepts messages from people in its organization. Is that the tech info? I'm assuming.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So if you have a challenge right now, we'll look into why that has come out, but you can email me directly. So I don't know if we can put up my last name there, but it's Stacy, STACY, .Leidwinger, LEIDWINGER at GoliathTechnologies.com. Thanks, Stephanie. She just put it in the chat.
And that was the last of the questions.
All right, if that's all of the questions, we can wrap up. I'm putting in the chat window for you right now that link to the survey, and then let me get my screen back up for you guys. I know that some of you may have opted in for a chance to win the Lego Star Wars set. So just there we go. Just as a reminder, I know some of you are looking about that. We will choose the winner at random offline, and we'll announce the winner on Twitter. So that's That one's an exciting prize, actually. I'd like to win it. Give those of you who might have kids home from school, this could be a useful thing to have right now. But otherwise, we hope you'll check us out at mycugc.org. We still have lively forum discussions going on. You can still check in with your local group and see what's happening. You can find pre-recorded webinars that we've had from the past and read up on our blogs. We've got a couple blogs out there right now that deal with some of this stuff going on right now. So I'm happy to have you come out to mycugc.org and check it out. And with that, I think I will let everyone get back to their day. Thank you so much, Yemi and Stacy. I appreciate you taking the time and being on with us today. And thank you to Richard for keeping an eye on all those questions for us.
And thanks for having us all here. I appreciate it.
No problem. All right, everyone. We hope you all stay healthy and well and wash your hands, don't touch your face, and we'll see you all at mycugc.org again soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.